Alex stood silently outside his apartment, gripping the steering wheel tightly, his gaze empty as he stared out the car window. The night was late, and he had no intention of returning to the company party. Yet, an uneasy feeling gnawed at him, like something was lingering in the air, preventing him from stopping. He started the engine, deciding to do something he never thought he would, follow his wife, Sophia. The sensation was foreign, cold, and unfamiliar. He never imagined he would be standing here, but tonight, everything felt upside down. They had agreed to go home together, but now, after the brief glance at the party, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His wife and his best friend, Matt, had exchanged looks that didn't seem like those between friends. It was something deeper, something Alex could not ignore. As he drove, everything around him seemed to blur, and the only thing on his mind was one question: does she still love me? He couldn't answer it, but one thing was clear: what he was seeing didn't seem like a coincidence. This wasn't the first time something strange had happened between them, and now, he had undeniable evidence in front of him. He parked the car along the side of the road, across from the hotel where Sophia and Matt had just entered. The night was dark, the streetlights casting faint reflections off his car's windows, but within that silence, the sound of his own breath echoed. They had stopped at a hotel, a place he had never heard of before. His heart began to race as he watched them turn into the hotel's parking lot. Alex turned off the engine and sat still, watching. The quiet inside the car felt suffocating, like the world had stopped spinning. He knew what he was seeing, but he couldn't bring himself to act just yet. He didn't know what to do, didn't know what he was supposed to feel. His mind raced, but his body refused to move. They had entered the hotel together, disappearing into the darkness. Alex took a deep breath, the weight of it all settling into his chest. His emotions were a mix of confusion, anger, and disbelief. He couldn't believe what he was seeing: his wife, the woman he trusted most, with the one person who had always been by his side. Everything felt like it was falling apart. The past seemed meaningless, and the future uncertain. Without thinking, he pulled out his phone and dialed Chris, a private investigator he had worked with on a few past jobs. "I need some photos," Alex said in a strained voice, "as soon as possible." There was a pause before Chris answered, "Got it. I'll send them to you right away." As Alex waited, he couldn't shake the image of Sophia and Matt walking into that hotel. The pain gnawed at him, but his determination was beginning to overtake the sorrow. He had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. At the moment, Alex sat still in the car, the air thick around him, each breath coming heavier. Everything felt like it was slowing down, the events of the night swirling in his mind. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the hotel, where Sophia and Matt had just gone in. The picture that had formed in his mind, one he couldn't deny anymore, was too painful to face. He knew that whatever was going on, it wasn't just a misunderstanding. Alex had never expected this moment to come. He had always trusted his wife, Sophia, and he had always considered Matt his best friend, someone he could count on. But now, everything was shattered. As he watched the two of them disappear into the hotel, a cold certainty washed over him. He wasn't just feeling betrayed by Sophia, it felt like he was losing his entire world. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he dialed Chris, the private investigator he had used before on past matters. "Chris, I need you to get me some photos, right now," he said, his voice steady but low. "Make sure they're clear." "Got it. I'll send them over ASAP," Chris replied quickly, and hung up. Sitting in the car, Alex could feel the tension growing inside him. He wasn't sure whether he was angry or heartbroken, but the sense of betrayal was undeniable. Every second that passed felt like a moment dragging him deeper into a pit he couldn't escape from. He watched the hotel entrance, his mind still unable to fully comprehend what he was witnessing. Minutes dragged by, and just as the weight of the silence inside the car was becoming unbearable, his phone buzzed. It was Chris. Alex glanced at the screen, the photos appearing before his eyes. Each one confirmed what he had feared the most. The unmistakable image of Matt and Sophia, close together, no longer the friendly, innocent gestures he once thought they shared. Now, they were caught in each other's gaze, their body language betraying the closeness that went beyond mere friendship. Alex's heart sank. He leaned back in the seat, gripping the wheel tightly as he tried to steady his breathing. It wasn't just the pictures that hurt. It was the realization that his entire relationship with Sophia, his trust in Matt, everything had been a lie. The images burned in his mind, refusing to leave. He had no choice but to confront them, but part of him wanted to run away from it all. But Alex was done running. He wasn't going to let this go unnoticed. The truth, no matter how painful, needed to be exposed. The next day, Alex confronted Sophia, no longer hiding the fury and hurt that had built up inside of him. He wanted answers, and he wanted them now. When he entered their home, Sophia was already there, looking flustered as if she knew exactly what was coming. She tried to smile at him, but Alex saw through it. "Sophia, we need to talk," he said, his voice cold. "About what, Alex?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. Alex placed the photos on the table between them. "About this," he said bluntly. Sophia's face went pale as she looked at the pictures. For a moment, she was silent. I don't know what you think you're seeing," she stammered, but there was no denying it. The evidence was right there, and the hurt in Alex's eyes made her falter. "You don't know what I'm seeing." "Really?" Alex's voice grew louder, anger rising with every word. "Don't try to lie to me, Sophia. I know everything. I saw you with Matt. I saw what's been going on behind my back." Sophia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked like she was searching for something to say, anything to justify what had happened, but there was nothing. "I don't know what I expected from you, but this," Alex shook his head, his voice breaking slightly. "You've been seeing him behind my back for how long? And you never thought I would find out?" Sophia's face crumpled, but still, she didn't answer. Alex could see the guilt written all over her face, but it was too late. The damage was done. "I'm done," Alex said, his voice now steady. "You've betrayed me, and there's no coming back from this." Sophia didn't say anything else. She simply stood there, frozen, as Alex turned and walked out the door, leaving their home, and their marriage, behind. The finality of it all hit him like a wave, but deep down, Alex knew it was the right decision. He could feel the weight lifting off him, step by step, as he left the life he had once known. He didn't have the answers yet, but he knew one thing for sure: he wasn't going to let Sophia and Matt destroy him. He would rebuild, and this time, it would be on his terms. Alex sat still in the car, the air heavy, each breath coming slower, as if everything around him had paused. His thoughts swirled with the undeniable images in his mind, the painful reality of what he had just witnessed, his wife and his best friend walking into that hotel together. The anger and confusion slowly built up inside him, like a pressure he could no longer ignore. The world outside the car seemed distant, as though he was trapped in a bubble, unable to escape the truth that had just been exposed. He pulled out his phone, still shaking slightly as he dialed Chris, the private investigator he'd used in the past. "I need those photos, now," Alex said, his voice low but urgent. "Clear ones. Don't miss a thing." "Got it. I'll send them right away," Chris replied, his voice brisk. The call ended, and Alex leaned back, staring at the hotel across the street. Every second felt like an eternity as he waited for the confirmation, for the proof that would force him to confront what he already knew deep down. His mind raced, questioning everything. Was he overreacting? Or had his entire life been a lie? Moments later, his phone buzzed with a new message. Chris had sent the photos. Alex opened the images and froze. There they were, Sophia and Matt, caught in intimate moments, their closeness undeniable. It wasn't just a friendship, it was something deeper, something Alex had never seen before. The photos burned into his mind, each one a piercing reminder of how completely he had been betrayed. Alex's heart hammered in his chest as the weight of the betrayal settled over him like a heavy blanket. The disbelief that had overwhelmed him earlier was now replaced by something sharper, hurt, fury, and a quiet understanding. There was no turning back now. The truth was right in front of him. It wasn't a misunderstanding, nor was it just a simple mistake. This had been going on for a while. He clenched his fists, trying to hold himself together. The pain was suffocating, but there was no room for weakness now. His body trembled, not from fear, but from a deep, painful realization that everything he had trusted, everything he thought he knew, had been ripped away. He could almost hear his heart breaking, each beat like a drum of finality. Alex knew what he had to do. He couldn't sit idly by, wallowing in the hurt. He had to confront them, Sophia and Matt, and make sure they understood the consequences of their actions. But it wasn't just about the photos. It was about taking control of his life again. He wasn't going to let them have power over him anymore. He wasn't going to let their betrayal define him. The next morning, Alex walked into their home with a calmness he didn't quite feel. His hands were steady, but his mind was in turmoil. Sophia was already there, sitting on the couch, as if she knew something was coming. The silence between them was thick, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "Sophia," Alex began, his voice clear but cold, "we need to talk." She looked up at him, her eyes wide, and for a split second, Alex saw a flicker of fear cross her face. But she quickly masked it with a forced smile. "About what, Alex?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out the photos from his jacket pocket and laid them down on the coffee table between them. Sophia's expression faltered as she looked at the images, and Alex could see the color drain from her face. What is this?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "You know exactly what it is," Alex replied, his tone sharp. "You and Matt. All those times I trusted you, thinking everything was fine. How long has this been going on, Sophia?" Sophia's mouth opened and closed as if she were searching for words, but none came. The guilt was written all over her face, and in that moment, Alex realized there was nothing she could say that would make this right. I never meant for this to happen, Alex," she finally said, her voice trembling. It just happened. Just happened?" Alex echoed, his anger flaring. "How do you explain that? How long has this been going on behind my back? Was our whole relationship a lie?" Sophia's silence answered him louder than any words could. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to explain herself anymore. She just sat there, defeated, as the weight of her actions came crashing down. "I trusted you," Alex said, his voice breaking slightly. "I believed in you. And this is what I get in return." He couldn't stay there any longer. He didn't want to hear any more excuses or empty apologies. He was done. The finality of it all hit him like a wave. He turned and walked away, leaving Sophia behind, not because he hated her, but because he realized that he had to let go of everything. There was no going back. The life they had once shared was gone, and Alex was left standing at the edge of a new beginning, uncertain of where it would lead, but certain that it had to be done. Alex sat in the car, the air growing heavier with each passing minute, his breath shallow as his mind raced. The images from the photos Chris had sent him were burned into his memory, each one searing through the fog of disbelief. Sophia and Matt, caught in moments of intimacy, moments that were meant for Alex alone, had completely shattered the life he thought he knew. But now, as the pain sank deeper into his chest, it was time for him to act. He couldn't just sit back and let this betrayal define him. He had to make them face the consequences. The next day, Alex didn't waste any time. He had no interest in playing games, no desire to seek closure through endless arguments. He had already seen the truth. And so, with a quiet resolve, he marched into the living room where Sophia sat waiting for him. She didn't look surprised to see him. In fact, Alex had the sense she had been expecting this moment for a while. "Alex, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled the photos from his jacket pocket and slammed them down on the coffee table in front of her. The sound of the paper hitting the wood was loud, like a slap across her face. Sophia's eyes widened, and for a moment, she just stared at the pictures. It was clear that she knew this confrontation was coming. But the words didn't seem to come as easily as she had imagined. I don't know what to say," she finally muttered, her voice weak. "You don't have to say anything," Alex replied, his tone low but cutting. "These photos speak for themselves. You and Matt. How long has this been going on? How long have you been lying to me?" Sophia looked away, a wave of guilt flashing across her face. She didn't speak for several seconds. The silence between them stretched, filled with the weight of everything left unsaid. "I never meant for it to happen this way," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It just happened. It just happened." Alex repeated, his anger building with every word. "You think I'm supposed to believe that? You've been betraying me behind my back, and now you want me to accept your excuses?" Sophia shifted uncomfortably in her seat, unable to meet his gaze. Alex could see the truth in her silence. There was no real explanation, no justification that could ever make this right. All the years of trust, all the promises they had made to each other, had been destroyed in an instant. "I don't know what happened to us, Alex," she said, finally looking him in the eye. "But it's not what you think. It's not like that." Alex shook his head, his heart aching. "Don't lie to me. I'm not stupid. I saw everything." Sophia opened her mouth to speak again, but nothing came out. Alex had already heard enough. He didn't need her explanations anymore. This was it. The end. "You've made your choice," Alex said, his voice cold now, the anger giving way to a painful calm. "And I've made mine." Without another word, Alex turned and walked out the door. He wasn't angry anymore, at least not in the way he had been earlier. He was simply done. He had given his heart to someone who didn't deserve it, and now, he was taking it back. As he stepped into the cool night air, a strange sense of relief washed over him. It wasn't about revenge, and it certainly wasn't about getting back at Sophia or Matt. It was about reclaiming control over his life. He had let go of the people who had wronged him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he could breathe again. A week passed, and with it, the tension began to ease, but Alex still couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. He had confronted Sophia, exposed the truth, and walked away from a relationship that had meant so much to him. Now, he was left standing at the edge of something unknown, something uncertain, but something that, deep down, he knew was necessary. The weight of the past had lifted, but it had left behind a hollow space in his life, a place that needed to be filled with something new. That evening, Alex received a message from Eva. They hadn't spoken much since the night he confronted Sophia, but Eva had been a quiet, steady presence in his life. She had offered him solace, understanding, and something he didn't know he needed, the opportunity to heal. Her message was simple: "Do you want to meet up? I think we should talk." He didn't hesitate. Despite everything he had been through, he knew that Eva had been there for him when he needed it most. She was someone who saw beyond the pain, someone who understood the weight of his loss without needing to say a word. Alex had no plans for the night, so he agreed to meet her. When they met, Eva smiled at him with warmth that felt like a balm to his weary soul. There was a lightness in her expression, something unspoken but reassuring. "I'm glad you're okay, Alex," she said softly as they sat down at a quiet corner table in the small cafe. "I know it's been a rough time, but I think you're handling it better than you realize." Alex sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I'm not sure about that. Some days it feels like everything's just falling apart, you know. I still don't know what to make of all of this. Eva nodded, her gaze steady and kind. You don't have to have it all figured out right away. Sometimes, it's about taking things one step at a time. You don't have to fix everything in a day. He smiled faintly at her words. She was right. He didn't have to rush through the pain or the uncertainty. There was time to process it all, time to rebuild. For the first time in what felt like forever, Alex allowed himself to feel something other than anger or hurt. He could feel the smallest stirrings of hope, a light flickering at the edges of his heart. I don't know what comes next, Alex confessed, but I think I'm starting to accept that maybe that's okay. I've spent so much time trying to control everything, trying to hold on to something that wasn't really there. Eva smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. That's the hardest part, I think. Letting go. But you're stronger than you give yourself credit for, Alex. You're starting over, and that's not easy, but it's also a chance for something better. Alex met her gaze and for the first time, he allowed himself to believe that things could be better. He had lost so much, but in this moment, he felt like he could begin again. He wasn't the same man he had been before. The man who had trusted blindly, the man who had allowed himself to be crushed by the weight of someone else's choices. No, he was something else now. Someone who understood the value of his own worth, someone who knew that moving forward didn't mean forgetting the past, it meant learning from it. I don't want to let the past define me, Alex said, his voice stronger than it had been in days. I'm ready to move on, to make something new of myself. Eva reached across the table, gently squeezing his hand. And you will. You'll make it. I believe in you, Alex. As they sat there, talking and laughing, something inside Alex began to shift. The future didn't seem so daunting anymore. There was a possibility of hope, of rebuilding, and of finding peace within himself. He had been through hell, but now, he was standing on the other side, a little stronger, a little wiser, and a lot more certain that the best was yet to come. For the first time in a long while, Alex felt free. Not free from the pain, because the scars would always remain, but free to choose his path, free to decide who he would become. And in that moment, as he looked at Eva, he knew that he wasn't alone in this. He had a new chapter ahead of him, and he wasn't afraid to turn the page.